The new revision of Incoterms, Incoterms 2010, became effective 1 January 2011. There are a number of significant changes from the previous revision, Incoterms 2000. In this video, we highlight 5 of the most significant changes for you, so you can determine if the changes have any impact on your own trading terms, if you are a trader, or if you have another role, if there is any impact for your customers, suppliers, or clients. In this video, we'll look at the following 5 changes. Firstly, the ICC rules for both domestic and international trade terms. Secondly, we look at why the ship's rail delivery point has been replaced by the term on board. Thirdly, why the maritime rules are not suitable for containers. Fourthly, we particularly look at how FOB is often misused and why FCA should be used instead. And fifthly, we answer the question, how do the new D terms, DAT and DAP, work? Hi-ho and welcome. I'm Lance School, the Savvy Navigator of Key Directions, and with my colleague Corinne Campbell of XDoc, we've extensively researched the changes in the current Incoterms 2010 and the impact those changes may have to traders in various situations. That research we conducted has resulted in our publication, the Made Easy e-guide to Incoterms 2010 rules. So let's look at the main changes. Firstly, Incoterms 2010 can now be referred to in domestic transactions as well as what has traditionally been exclusively for international transactions. Consequently, the terms can be referred to within a country. For example, the United States of America. In fact, this change came about because of submissions to the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC, from ICC America to replace US legislation that had been repealed domestically back in 2004. Domestic trade also covers transactions within a trading community or trading bloc, such as the European Union, the EU, where customs borders between member countries do not exist. Ex-works, EXW, under Incoterms 2010 is deemed to be more appropriate for domestic trade, while FCA, free carrier, is suggested to be used for international trade. The ship's rail terminology has been replaced by on board. In previous revisions of Incoterms, 3 of the maritime rules had in their wording the concept of delivery occurring when the goods had passed over the ship's rail on the carrying vessel. Those terms are free on board, cost and freight, cost, insurance and freight. Thus the rather dated image of the cargo wrist swinging to and fro across an imaginary perpendicular line above the ship's rail has now been replaced by the requirement of the seller to deliver the goods on board the vessel. This more closely reflects modern commercial reality. The maritime terms are more suited to bulk or break bulk shipments, for instance wheat, iron ore, coal or petroleum. To summarise, in 3 of the 4 maritime rules, free on board, cost and freight, cost, insurance and freight, the goods are required to be delivered on board the vessel. While we are discussing the maritime terms, this is a good point to highlight the fact that the 4 maritime terms may not be appropriate for containers. I'm quoting here from the words of the actual Incoterms 2010 rules. So what is the reason that traders should not use the maritime terms for containers? It is because of the defined place of delivery by the seller. With FOB, cost and freight, cost, insurance and freight, the seller is responsible for delivering the goods on board the vessel. With containers, however, the seller is normally delivering the goods either to a packing depot when the goods are LCL, less than a container load, or a consolidation or groupage shipment, or to a container yard or terminal when the consignment is a full container load, an FCL shipment. At the container packing depot, the LCL cargo, the carrier on behalf of the buyer takes delivery of the cargo, packs the container, transports that container to the ship site and loads the container on board the vessel. For the full container load consignment, the seller delivers the container to the container yard or terminal, and the carrier, on behalf of the buyer, takes delivery of the full container and loads the container on board the vessel. In both cases, the seller has no control over that part of the process that the carrier performs on behalf of the buyer, even though, with the maritime terms, the seller bears the risks until the goods are placed on board the vessel. So Incoterms 2010 recommends the following substitution for the terms that are maritime terms when containers are concerned. Free carrier instead of free alongside ship. Free carrier instead of free on board. Carriage paid to instead of cost and freight, and carriage insurance paid instead of cost, insurance and freight. We've covered the notion that for containers, FOB should not be used, as more appropriate to use FCA. It is worth highlighting that there is still the incorrect usage of FOB for air cargo. This is definitely incorrect, and the FCA airport or FCA air cargo terminal should be used instead. FCA, as we discussed earlier, can be used for any mode of transport, including sea freight. So that brings us to the fifth point of our video, the D terms. How do the new D terms DAT and DAP work? In Incoterms 2010, the following terms have been deleted: delivered at frontier, delivered ex ship, delivered ex key, delivered duty unpaid. All these terms, with the exception of delivered duty unpaid, were infrequently used by the trading community. Two new terms have been added to the list: delivered at place, DAP, and DAT, delivered at terminal. Let's see what replaces what and how they work. DAT, delivered at terminal, replaces one deleted term, DEQ, delivered ex key. DAP, delivered at place, replaces three deleted terms, delivered at frontier, delivered ex ship, and delivered duty unpaid. Now, as I mentioned, DDU, delivered duty unpaid, was a term used by many sellers in their negotiated contracts where they, the seller, took responsibility for the delivery of the goods, generally to the buyer's premises. To help us understand the new terms and their functions, we'll look at them individually and then compare the two. Firstly, with delivered at terminal, Incoterms 2010 defines the terminal as a place, whether covered or not, such as a quay, warehouse, yard, road, rail or air cargo terminal. The seller is required not only to deliver the goods to the agreed terminal, but also to unload the goods from the arriving means of transport and place the goods at the disposal of the buyer at that terminal. When considering this definition, the term could even be the buyer's premises. Next is DAP, delivered at place. The seller delivers when the goods are placed at the disposal of the buyer on the arriving means of transport, ready for unloading at the named place of destination. In reality, the place of destination could be any agreed place in the buyer's country. So the seller delivers to the agreed place and the buyer unloads the goods from the arriving means of transport, and that could be at the buyer's premises. So now let's compare DAT to DAP. The delivery point could actually, for both, be any place agreed to by both parties within the buyer's country. The main significant difference is that with DAT, the seller is required to unload the cargo at the agreed place, and with DAP, it is the buyer that is required to unload the goods there. The other D term is DDP, delivered duty paid. It is basically the same as in Incoterms 2000 rules, in that the seller delivers the goods to the agreed place but does not unload goods. Importantly, the seller also is required to pay all duties and taxes applicable in the buyer's country. So that covers the 5 major changes with Incoterms 2010. If you found this video helpful, great. We have some more help for you. Our e-guide is now available. The unique quick reference format allows you a quick analysis of each Incoterms rule. Here's a quick tour of our e-guide. We have detailed content pages for quick reference. We have legends for the remarks and charts icons. For each Incoterms we have 6 elements. 1. A simple description of the term. 2. A summary of the responsibilities of the seller and the buyer. 3. A detailed checklist of obligations of the seller and the buyer. 4. Our remarks on what both parties need to consider with the particular term. 5. Detailed case studies and practical scenarios are set out in a standard format so that you can compare and contrast different scenarios and find one that best represents your situation. 6. Finally, the charts with each scenario provide a visual representation of the key elements of that rule. Our e-guide simplifies the process of selecting the most appropriate term for your situation. We recommend the 6-step process of determining the correct Incoterms rule. Consult, confirm, contract. 1. Consult. Consult the e-guide and work through the guide utilising the 6 elements of the quick reference format. 2. Confirm. Once a rule has been chosen that relates to your specific situation, consult that section of the official Incoterms publication to verify the applicability and make sure that all aspects of the rule are understood. You could also consult your legal advisor. 3. Contract. Discuss the rule with your trading partner, seller or buyer, and make sure that all elements and implications are completely understood by both parties. Once agreement has been reached to use that particular term, the Incoterms rule, then the contract can be finalised. This is where you can buy our guide and have immediate access. You may want to pause this video to note the details. Thanks for joining me on the video and all the best with your Incoterms 2010. This is Lance Schooler, the Savvy Navigator, signing off. Bye for now.